A seat. Okay, wow. That's great. I can start silence. That's some power. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the first part of your day. Second part will be a bit more active. And I hope you enjoyed the coffee break as well. So I would like to welcome the Energy Institute and their team here. They will be delivering first part of presentation from Josephine Neal, who's an architect at Arcadis. And then we're going to have the Energy Institute Young Professionals Network delivering a workshop. So do hear out and take notes, because the information you're going to hear now is going to be useful for the workshop later. I have shared the group allocations. It's not the same as the groups you have been assigned to. I'm going to repeat that information at the end of the presentation and before we split for the workshop. But if you don't see your name on there, please do let me know and I will allocate you. But this next session is called Sustainable Cities Workshop, Design Your Own 15-Minute Cities. Not sure if you're familiar with this concept. If not, you're going to discover it very soon. So I would like to welcome to the stage Josephine Neal from Arcadis, and then the team from the Energy Institute first, Lisa Pardini, Energy Specialist at Ion Ventures, Marta de Oliveira, Senior Associate at Ikigai, and Carolina Ziba, Offshore Wind Associate at Carbon Trust. So I would like to welcome the Energy Institute to the stage. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, let's see if the slides work. Okay, they do. Thank you, Belen, for the intro. I know that I'm a participant of the forum, but I'm also representing the Energy Institute Young Professional Network. Who are we? We are a group of volunteers, 14, and we have actually 5 people of the committee here in the room today. Can I please ask you to raise your hand and show yourself? Yeah, Belen is also, he's like doing double hat. Who's the Energy Institute? The Energy Institute is a big organization, is an international organization that brings together like professionals across like all the energy sector, and we represent the young part of it. We are the London branch, but there are like branches across the globe, and I think Carolina will speak about it in a second. What we do, we mostly like do events and panel, and we kind of like act as a hub of like young energy leaders, and we are also like very independent. We are a charity. Our work, it's like completely volunteer out of our own time because we like it. And yeah, we want like, because we don't have like a big sponsor, like we decide what event we want to do. And so last year, one topic was around the sustainable city. It was like one that I personally like because I live in London and I've always lived in like big cities, and it's something that we already heard. So big cities are like part of like the problem of like pollution. They emit like so much like carbon emission. So we're like, how can we tackle this? And we also like our event, we want them to be like very interactive. This is a snapshot of the events that we have this year. I think the second one, the October, like how the UK Labour government is doing, is going to be in 2 days. I know you're here, but if you're in London, please do reach out. And if you're not in London, but you want to start your own network, please also do reach out, because we will offer support if you want to start your own network. Various topic, also quite innovative as well. For example, like in February, we're gonna look at how is nature driving the energy market. I think like what we're gonna do, I don't know if you have done already, but let's start with like a quick icebreaker. I think something that cities are quite famous for, also like outside the skyline, is also their transport map. So let's try and guess the city based on the underground rail map. Please don't shout it, just like raise your hand and I'll see who's raising the hand first. Let's go. Any guesses? No?
Good guess, though.
Yeah. Quite on the other side. That's right. It's Rio. Next. Yeah. Who? No, like. Yeah? Yeah. I think another one. Hint is on the map. I forgot this one. Oh, no.
Huh?
Look at the icons.
I mean, yeah.
No. Yeah. There we go.
So impressive.
I think everyone should get this one. Yeah. Thank you. I think I'll pass it over to Carolina, but like just in general, Carolina is going to talk a bit more about some initiative that we have here at the Young Professional Energy Institute, and then the core part of the team and like the workshop and everything is going to be presented by Josephine. So hope you really enjoy. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I hope you've had a wonderful morning. I'm here to talk about a different initiative that we do with the Energy Institute as well, called Generation 2050. It's an initiative spearheaded by the Energy Institute, focused around developing, supporting young professionals in their careers, and encouraging sort of the necessary skills, as well as supporting the build out of those necessary skills. We're gonna do sort of various we're going to express this initiative in various ways, through events, through reports, or various white papers, or through kind of engagement as well with our international community. And that's really something that we want to lean on, the different partnerships that we have, as well as the diverse network of the Energy Institute, which is very international. So we do have branches across the Middle East, across the North America, in Eastern Asia as well. So there's Africa as well. So we've got good access. And then that's why we're also here, because we're very interested in getting that intergenerational, diverse set of views on where we want, as young professionals, as sort of early professionals in energy, to go. Where do we want that industry to be in 2050? So one of the key things that we're doing as part of this initiative is a survey, which I know sounds really, really boring, but stay with me. We're trying to gather data to understand where we are now, to understand what professionals or young professionals believe they need to get to become leaders. Where does the energy industry, or what should it look like in 2050 as well? So we want to understand everybody's perspective, or diverse perspectives on that. And from that on, we want to create policy papers. We want to guide that engagement through the Energy Institute, especially. We want to develop mentorship programs, or sort of, we want to hear from you guys what you think is most important for you, and then direct that engagement from then on. So to give you a little taste of what the survey is going to ask, and I really love getting this data initially, please scan. I really hope that's going to work. I actually do. Yeah, please scan. Start getting to the questions. I'm going to get my laptop. 1 second. There's also a code, and you can go on menti.com and use 44647799. Okay, you won't be seeing the results, but I will tell you what they are. We're creating a little word map. So the question is, what do you like about being in the energy industry? What drew you to it? I'm seeing sustainability, I'm seeing opportunity, I'm seeing innovation, dynamic, development, important, impactful, future. I'm seeing change, creative, climate change, contribution, transition, urgency, necessity. Some really great words are coming up. Thank you for your engagement. Okay, great. We've got 46 people on. Great, guys. 48. Alrighty, let's see if this works. If I go on to the next thing, does that give you a second question? Do you see a second question load? No? Yes? Oh, great. Okay. Will the world limit global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees warming over the century? What do you think? Is that what you're saying? No. What are you saying? The same question. We got it. Okay, next question, guys. Oh, okay, I won't say yet because we're only getting like 6 responses. So I'll wait until we have a few more and I'll tell you what the results are, not to skew you. In 1 week time, I heard that. Okay, interesting. Okay, it's changing. Alrighty, so we've got, I don't know if you can see that at all, but we've got the smallest number being yes at 7, then not sure at 9 of you, then no, and we won't get close at 14, but 21 of you think that no, but we will get close, which perhaps is somewhat positive, but it does tell you a lot about what we think about our industry. Okay, next question. That one was about achieving net zero climate targets. This one is about achieving energy, universal access to energy by 2050. Do we think that we're gonna achieve universal access to energy by 2050 internationally? 2030. Yes, the question is correct. Can confirm. Please chat to the people next to you. I love hearing the chatter. Okay. So we've got an equal number at yes and not sure. So 8 of us either say yes, we will, or we're not sure if we will. Then 17 of us say that no, but we will get close. And 28 think that no, and we won't get close. So clearly we think we're more likely to reach our climate targets than we are to reach universal energy access. The next 2 are a little bit longer, so you might have to read the question, but I think they're very important for me, and well, for the survey. This is about the most important skills and qualities needed by future energy professionals, and these need to be ranked. So please take your time, chat to each other. Do you believe that we need a good understanding of science behind energy production and distribution? Do we need digital skills and AI integration, energy finance and cost analysis, familiarity with energy regulation and carbon policy, the ability to think creatively and develop innovative solutions, a personal commitment to sustainability, communication skills, or working in diverse teams in a global context? You just rank all of them, essentially. From top being your top skill to bottom being the least important skill. We'll definitely send the results around as well afterwards so you can see the pretty graphs. It is cool to see everybody's perspectives. All right. We got 39 responses. 42. Okay, you guys are panicking now that I'm talking. Alrighty. So, I wonder if the results will tell us something about the room. The top skill is science behind energy production and distribution. Are we mostly engineers in here? If you're an engineer, raise your hand. Wow, okay. Certainly, lots of engineers. Next one, communication skills to engage stakeholders and advocate for energy initiatives. The ability to think creatively and develop innovative solutions. And then a personal commitment to sustainability. Those are top 4, which is cool to see. Then we've got ability to work collaboratively with diverse teams, energy finance and cost analysis, familiarity with energy regulation and carbon policy, and lastly, digital skills and AI integration. Interesting indeed. Last question. The most important tools, initiatives to support young professionals and future energy leaders. We've got mentorship, we've got professional development, networking opportunities, internships and apprenticeships, scholarships and grants, innovation hubs and incubators, and diversity and inclusion initiatives. Okay, great. We've got over 40 responses as well. Top spot, internships and apprenticeships. Then we've got scholarships and grants, networking opportunities, professional development, innovation hubs and incubators, mentorship, and diversity and inclusion initiatives, which certainly also tells us something about our audience. Thank you so much. That's what I wanted to find out from you for now. And please please answer the question, where do you want the energy industry to be in 2050 by completing the survey by the end of January 25. So I know I've just asked you these questions on the Mentimeter. That was amazing for engagement, but I would love to get more of your responses on the actual survey, which should take about 10 minutes to complete. Doesn't have to be right now, obviously not going to be right now, in fact, because we've got other things to do, but you will see it come through, and I would really, really appreciate it. It would be really helpful if you did spend the 10 minutes to fill that out. So thank you so much, and I will pass on to Josephine, who will introduce herself and start our workshop.
Oh, it's been a while since I did something like this. Okay, so hi everyone, how you doing? My name is Josephine Neal and I am an architect from Arcadis. So, very sustainable, very tech savvy, notes on a piece of paper. Okay, so just a little bit about who I am and what I do and why I might be here. So I am an architect, so I don't work directly in the energy sector, but instead I specialise in healthcare design, which if any of you have ever worked on a healthcare project, you will know is a real... I mean, I don't even know how to describe my day-to-day. It's like people come and tell me stuff and I'm just like, I don't even know what 10 of the words you just said are. But as well as being an architect, so you can see there, Royal Bournemouth Hospital, that's a hospital that's just being completed. It's been probably 12 years in the pipeline. I've been working on it for the last 6, including the master plan and strategy, and then going on to the big building. Don't get me wrong, it is not the most beautiful building in the world. I know that. As are many of the projects that I work on, because the NHS, our National Health Service, doesn't have lots of money, and all of that money goes into MRIs and expensive, beautiful equipment rather than an expensive, beautiful building. But I do believe that some of the things that we managed to get through are really beneficial to the people that use the building. As well as that, in my kind of day-to-day role at Arcadis, I'm a social value lead, which means I kind of go in to stakeholder engagement sessions. I talk to the different people that are going to be users of the building and try and understand what a new building will mean to them, as well as engaging with our local community where our office is, and trying to understand what the impacts and benefits of the design community that sits within our kind of Clerkenwell area. Like, it's like a hub of design and creativity in London, and it's a great area, but obviously the kind of impact of having lots of offices and lots of people come into that area has a detrimental effects to the residents that are there, because obviously it's pushed the value of the area up so much. I'm also a sustainability champion. Not quite sure what that means at the moment. It's probably just because I harp on about sustainability a lot. And I'm a mentor for our junior team as well. So we have 7 juniors in our London office at the moment. And they all kind of come to me, whether it's for pastoral care or to be like, I don't know what a mullion is, in which case, you know, that's fine. We all start somewhere. So much like if you guys started talking to me about energy, and I'd be like, I don't know. Aside from that, I run a lot of events, a lot like this kind of thing, just in my personal time, because I don't like doing stuff that's not work, apparently. I recently ran an event for the London Festival of Architecture called Reimagining Cities, and it's very much like what this is, and it was all based on Clerkenwell, and it brought everyone from the community, the design community, lots of different people in to talk about what we could do with Clerkenwell, and it was like real blue sky thinking. So I sit on the New London Architecture's Expert Panel for Healthcare, which is essentially looking at bettering our cities outside of the red line boundary of the hospital estate, and prevention over treatment, which hopefully you're all on board with. I'd rather that people weren't sick than they were sick and then we had to treat them. And I'm sure a lot of the NHS do as well. And as a part of that, I was asked to go, there's me looking very sheepish. It's a very small picture because I look terrified on stage at the Barbican a couple of years ago, which was kind of a part of that which led me to get the expert panel thing. And then as a last one, just because I know that there's obviously a connection with a young professionals network, just to harp on about the kind of benefits of being in a young professionals network, I run a next-gen healthcare network for people who are within the healthcare, construction, development and management industry. And I cannot tell you enough the benefits of being able to diversify out of your particular profession and also just across a whole range of offices and different people from all over. So at the moment that is UK based, it's regional, and it is a lot of work. So hats off to anyone that runs a network, but also just so beneficial. So don't let me put you off if you do want to start an energy institute, not in the UK. So yeah, okay, so that's me. So who's Arcadis? Does anyone know who Arcadis is? I would hope so, with a few, yeah. Okay, so we're absolutely massive. So if you don't know, get to know, essentially. So Arcadis is a kind of a world leader in delivering sustainable design, engineering, consultancy, solutions for natural and built assets, and we employ 36,000 people. So we're kind of one of the giants of sorts. So our size, like any large company operating within the construction industry, really means that we have a very serious impact on the world that you live in today. And it would actually be quite rare that you hadn't come across a space within the urban realm that Arcadis hadn't had some hand in. So yeah, and don't ask me all the projects because there's over 40,000 of them, so I don't know. But I do know the ones that I've worked on, and I know some of the other really exciting ones. So we're ranked #1 in the ESG risk rating score by Sustainalytics, and we're also named a top female-friendly company in the world by Forbes, which is a really big thing for me. I'm kind of in the Women in Architecture network as well, and I think obviously with the response about like diversity and inclusion, actually sometimes you can kind of forget that sometimes, well, I certainly have walked into a room and been like, oh my goodness me, it's all men and me, and everyone is 15 years older than me, and I'm meant to be leading this room, and it can be quite terrifying. So I really kind of champion the fact that we have kind of we're trying to break through some of the kind of social constructs and biases within the company, and that is not to say that we are perfect. I don't think anyone is, but hopefully we'll get there. So my role as an architect at Arcadis sits within our global business area, or GBA, because Arcadis love an acronym, within places, and that's within the architecture and urbanism division. And actually, just that division is the fourth biggest architecture business in the world. So working for a company of that size means you really kind of have to dedicate yourself to improving quality of life as a personal ambition, because otherwise you can get wrapped up in the kind of corporate jargon of such a huge company. But it does also mean that you get to have lots of impact if you can push that mission. So we kind of do this through adopting a number of key principles. So, what I'm going to talk about today is kind of really cements that. So adopting a people-first approach, always striving for design excellence, delivering with sustainable and ethical consciousness, utilising technological innovation, research and development, and harnessing our reach and influence to inform and knowledge share. And that's like the key thing, is like when you work for such a huge company, you've got to know the power that you can have. So I'm going to set the scene a little bit. I know there's been lots of conversation around sustainable cities. I'm obviously coming at this as someone, as a kind of built environment designer, of the things you work in, you live in, you educate yourself in. So cities around the world are growing rapidly, as I'm sure you know, and whilst these predicted numbers seem to kind of fluctuate dependent on who you ask or where you draw your data from, it can't be denied that there's a clear acceleration in the percentage of the world's population that are inhabiting our cities. So why? Well, on the upside, there tends to be better economic opportunity, larger job markets, better salaries, higher individual wealth. Education is often better within cities because there's a pull for teachers to live in the city because of those higher figures. There's also city-based institutions tend to get more funding because they tend to be more crowded, so there's kind of good things and bad things to that. There's normally better infrastructure, cheaper travel, access to varied leisure activities, all sorts. You guys know what a city offers. But living in a city is not always a choice for people. So obviously we have kind of urban sprawl, and many people who once lived in an area considered a town or a suburb or a village are now finding themselves within the confines of a once of where was once a neighbouring city is now a part of the city, as it kind of creeps into this like increasingly large geographical area. So there's also obviously natural disasters, extreme weather events, and being surrounded by what is now non-arable land, which kind of causes mass migration, or what we know to be climate migration, which is really based on a matter of desperation. So, you know, there's a real pull to do something. Although I will just caveat this, I am reading a book at the moment called Factfulness, which is a really interesting book. It's called Factfulness, and basically it turns upside down the way that we process data, because we inherently are kind of inbuilt to be slightly negative. And often when data is put in front of us, it's put to kind of spiral that. So I would really recommend that book. It's actually in my bag, so if anyone wants the full name, I will give it to you. So yeah, and now I'm going to carry on talking about how much of a disaster everything is. With this acceleration of city inhabitants, we've had the rise of the megacity, which is a city that's defined as having more than 10 million inhabitants. So obviously Tokyo in Japan is one of the kind of most discussed examples of a megacity. And having already kind of experienced rapid growth, it has nearly 40 million residents with informal and formal economies and a very unpredictable population distribution. So it's a city of like real intensity and beauty and vibrance, but it's also one of like social isolation and fragmentation and stress. And I think that's the kind of key when you start to think about how you might design a city, is there is so much to come into it, and how do you pull away from some of the most kind of the largest gaps, essentially, to pull that down to a medium. So cities, whether mega or not, are very complex, they're multifaceted, and they're very far. So there's some really fast developing cities. So I'm going to say the name of the city, but I don't know if I'm right, which is really bad because it's in Kerala. My partner is from Kerala. Malappuram, I don't think that's how you say it, in India is kind of one of the fastest growing cities in the world. There's 3 of our fastest growing cities there. So the population, it has grown by 44% between 2015 and 2020, and it's currently focusing on developing textiles, food production, and engineering. So some of you might end up there, who knows? There seems to be a lot of engineers in here, as kind of key industry. And obviously, you know, kind of the UK had its manufacturing boom years ago now and capitalised on the landscape of cities such as Birmingham, which offered canal routes or, for transport goods across the country. So when you start to think about when you're designing a city, you need to think about the kind of context that it sits in now, whether what its key industries are, what its city like strategic drive is as well. And that's a part of town design, village design, neighbourhood design. You kind of focus in. And so nowadays, obviously, the UK doesn't look like the Peaky Blinders set. And it's kind of largely turned its back on manufacturing, which we'll have for and against arguments for another day. And kind of currently focusing on innovation districts, which is something our Arcadis placemaking team are kind of at the forefront of in terms of designing up and down the country this drive for innovation districts, which is a kind of government-based, like top-down strategy for where the UK is going to go. And this is kind of driven by this like UK-led rise, what the government want as a UK-led intellectual property rise. And that's in the same way that you might consider San Francisco has at the moment. So an ever-evolving strategy for city growth means an ever-evolving city. But what does a sustainable city look like? So you're all sitting in this room because you wanted to be involved in the Sustainable Cities Workshop. Well, I hope so, anyway. And given the acceleration in city living and your interest in energy, which, let's face it, is the hot, hot, hot topic. I've literally written hot, hot, hot here, because it is very hot on the agenda at the moment. So I would be a little bit concerned if you weren't interested in exploring what our cities as a whole might look like and might encompass in the future, because you're a part of that. So let's start with a really basic question. And I don't mean that there's a simple answer to it, but I mean that I'm like basically rolling my own eyes for starting a presentation with an Oxford Dictionary quote. But essentially is the Oxford Dictionary defines sustainability as the ability to continue economic, social, cultural, and environmental aspects of human society and non-human environment. And then it goes on. So the key here really is economic, social, cultural, and environmental. So what is your take on sustainability? So maybe I'll start it off and then people can shout out some things. So I guess when I ask my little niece, she might say sustainable cities are green, or they're natural, or there's lots of parks, they're biodiverse. Does anyone else have anything else they want to say? No? Accessible, great. Anyone else? Inclusive, accessible, perfect. So safe, equitable, fair, fabulous. We're on the same page. So so we're not just thinking about sustainability in the terms of how much resource you are using, but we're thinking about whether that city can essentially continue into the future without major change over and over and over again. So that also comes with innovation, industrial spaces, educational spaces. So, it's not, I guess what I'm trying to say is the whole point of this workshop really is to pull your mind out of the idea that sustainability just sits within kind of networks and resources. So, I've got an example. The list, that list can kind of go on, and basically what we need to come away from is the idea that it's not just about reducing carbon or using existing materials or diversifying green spaces. And in fact, actually, these elements are often a byproduct of much wider kind of problem solving. So, for example, by placing a garden centre within your neighbourhood, you provide a local economic growth opportunity. Add a learning space within that garden, and you provide education on the natural environment to local residents. Add a cafe and a toilet to that educational space, and you provide a meeting point for socially isolated community members to congregate and mingle with each other. And all of a sudden, you are creating a sense of place. But it doesn't stop there. A sense of place means the community tend to care more about their surroundings. The level of littering may decrease. People feel safer, so they walk more. People begin to take an interest in their neighbours. Someone with a surplus of balcony-grown tomatoes shares them with everyone around them. So that's local economy, education, social integration, reduction of waste, equitable streets, food sharing. And then the plants in the centre are also offering their own little kind of biodiverse carbon sequestering benefits too, as a byproduct. Okay? So, how do you go about designing based on thinking about all of these things and not having your head essentially explode? So, does anyone know where this is? Who said Paris? Very good, very quick. Are you from Paris? Oh, God. Okay. Whew. Okay, so, I mean, the shape gives it away immediately, particularly if you're a Parisian. So Paris is built around the River Seine, and the early development of Paris was centred around the natural island within the centre of what is today's city. So the island was used as a kind of fortified crossing point for those that inhabited it around 300 BC before it was conquered by the Romans, who implemented many of the favourite Roman staples such as amphitheatres, forums, and of course an extensive bath complex, which I've heard is good here. So whilst the main city focused around that natural island, infrastructure to maintain the population began to expand beyond these boundaries. So I'm guessing that probably sounds relatively familiar. You're in your city, but your food is not necessarily grown in that city. It's probably grown in Holland, but you know. Production of food, cemeteries being located on the periphery of a city, they began to kind of shift what we now would call the kind of red line boundary when we're designing. And Paris benefited from being able to utilise kind of locally quarried stone as a resource to build, so it saw the city kind of expand very greatly throughout the medieval period. So around 508, Clovis had kind of conquered much of the original Western Empire, and he decided he needed a centrally located base for operations and chose the walled city of Paris for defensive reasons. However, he did not hold court within the walls and began to encompass the game-filled forests, vineyards and grain fields into the city extent. So that red line boundary has expanded in the same way that we kind of think about urban sprawl at the moment. So by 1960, Hugues Capet, and you can correct me on all of this later, quietly, so I don't look stupid, had taken control of the Paris Basin, and businesses were concentrating on the northern bank, and the southern bank had a kind of flourishing reputation for schooling, which it still does. Paris still has some incredible universities. So Viking attacks were less frequent, always good, which allowed the river transport to accelerate in popularity, and by the 11th century, rapid land clearance into the surrounding areas of this tiny little island meant that new settlements were erected and the growth of Paris was well underway. So by this point, the city has developed around key themes of defence, agriculture, schooling, settlement, green space and mobility. So I'm not going to go into any further of a history lesson of Paris because I'm not the right person to do it. However, what I'm going to say is that the understanding of a kind of sequence of a city's development is key to understanding the constraints and opportunities that present themselves when we think about how to reshape it. So nowadays, Paris is divided into 20 administrative districts, and they kind of spiral pattern outwards from the first district to the outer edges of the city. And the first, of course, encompasses the historical centre of Paris, although I think it actually crosses over the border slightly, but there we go. So each district has its own kind of identity and feel and flavour. There's kind of artistic charm in some, there's historic grandeur in others, and there's modernity in the kind of business district in another. And these offer the inhabitants of that space and visitors a kind of vibrant and multifaceted way to kind of play out life in the city. And a tapestry of a city kind of provides great opportunities and great constraints to design in. So on one side, the character of an area can unlock a designer's understanding of what kind of might or might not be successful to implement within the urban fabric. And on the other, how we expect to design a building, a master plan, or even like a small, tiny urban intervention that works for the specificities of a place if we don't know it personally. It's a really difficult challenge. You go into a city and you don't really know it, and you have to like do this kind of accelerated understanding of what the place is. And I'm sure the residents are like, go away. What are you doing? So because of how Paris developed, 10 of the districts have a riverbank, of which just a few years ago were an urban highway. Now, I'm sure that most people have seen the kind of urban regeneration of Paris. It's been incredibly well talked about and then was thrown all over the media during the Olympics because obviously there was kind of this huge celebration of where they got to. And I have to say, I'm sure there are numerous irritations and everything around a kind of urban regeneration that comes with it. King's Cross is another one. I know King's Cross really, really well. I went to university there. I studied there. I was all over it like a rash as it was kind of popping up out of the ground in a regeneration. I don't believe that a regeneration will capture everything that a place needs, but in the same way that I believe that King's Cross is a very successful regeneration, I think there are some really, really successful parts of the Paris regeneration. So a few years ago, there was an urban highway. It was used by 40,000 vehicles a day, and that's despite the banks of it actually being named a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of the importance, kind of grandeur of the buildings situated in it. And this road was kind of a key contributor to the city's high rates of air pollution and saw thousands of deaths each year. Now, I'm not going to like kind of briskly skip over that because of Lisa kind of highlighted about air pollution earlier. So I just want to say that in 2021, UNICEF reported that 8.1 million deaths globally are accounted to air pollution. And that means that air pollution has become the second leading risk factor for death. And that figure doesn't account for the many more millions of people that are living with chronic disease as a result of air pollution. So all of these people are putting a strain on healthcare systems, economies, and society, and it's not their fault. And so considering, for example, you consider how to lessen air pollution within your neighbourhood, and you watch that kind of benefit chain that we spoke about with the garden centre suddenly start to spiral. So that's what Paris set out to tackle. And it's just one of many initiatives that's kind of come out of Paris to clean up the city. And in 2016, after huge amounts of piloting, the road was converted into a car-free linear park as part of the mayor's car-free plan for Paris. And of course, taking cars out means redundant space that needs to be utilised for other things. And this is redundant space that needs to be utilised that looks over some of the most beautiful buildings in the world. So whilst it was actually considered a major project for Paris because of the upheaval of the mobility strategy of the city, the physical transformation of an old roadway into a pedestrianised space is not hugely complex. But what it does is kind of turn the hierarchy of movement around the city like totally on its head. So all of a sudden, walkers and cyclists and e-scooters are taking priority. And I actually just come back from Amsterdam, and it's exactly the same. And it is shocking to see the difference in the city as a result of flipping that hierarchy on its head. So commuters kind of began to walk to work. Residents could spend the weekends catching up with friends, sat overlooking some of Paris's most beautiful sights, and without the feeling of the city being invaded by tourists, which I'm sure if you come from a major city, you understand the frustrations of not being able to get to some of the great things in your city because the tourists have just taken over, as does everyone in Amsterdam. The project has given users a kind of renewed sense of belonging within their urban realm, and they're not an inconvenience or a safety concern to road users, but instead what we call within the architecture world, which I know is very pretentious, is that they are the agents of the built environment. So a sense of belonging fosters urban creativity for how we use our spaces, in which, essentially generates equity, economic growth, and sustainable habitation. So some of the projects there, they wouldn't have happened if you just said to someone, we might get rid of the cars, so what are you going to put there? You have to allow people to kind of build up a sense of their own belonging of the city, and then those designs start to kind of bring in what a successful urban folly is what we would call it, rather than just going, we're taking the cars away and we're putting this here. Everyone would go, well, I don't really want to go and hang out on that dirty road, you know? So Paris's urban regeneration of the riverbank is part of a wider drive to implement an urban planning policy called the 15-minute city. And the concept of the 15-minute city is to provide a city's inhabitants with their daily needs and necessities such as work, leisure, shopping, education, healthcare, all within a kind of 15-minute distance, either on foot or by bicycle. Okay, so I'm going to take out cycling from the equation because owning a bike or being able to rent a bike is a privilege not everyone can afford. So put your hand up if on foot you can reach a grocery shop within 15 minutes. Yeah, this should be pretty much most of you. Yeah? If you don't, then wow. No, keep your hand up, keep your hand up. Okay, so now keep your hand up if you can reach a green space within 15 minutes. So take it down if you can't. Okay, good. You should all still be there. Okay, keep it up still if you can get to your local school within 15 minutes on foot. Okay. What about your local transport hub? Yeah, good. Your local high street, so that's where you find your major kind of shopping spaces where you're going, so you don't have to buy everything on Amazon. The devil. Keep it up if you can reach your primary healthcare centre, so that's your doctors. Okay. Keep it up if you can reach your dentist. Place of work? There we go. See, now they all come down with place of work. Okay, so that is not very many people that could get to work, see their doctors, go to their dentist, buy their food, to get to a park within 15 minutes. That's not that many people. I mean, I don't know, maybe you live in a really, really rural, everyone here is from the countryside, I don't know. But still, I live in what would be considered like relatively central London. I can't get to work within 15 minutes. 18 on a bike, if I'm happy to get sweaty. Okay, so a 15-minute city concept was kind of popularised through the Paris City Plan. However, it's worth pointing out that actually, you know, it's kind of happening all over. So Buenos Aires, Portland, Barcelona, there's many more that have utilised the same principles and they kind of put under different names such as complete neighbourhoods, vital neighbourhoods, human scale cities. And during the pandemic, interest in kind of decentralisation of cities with more focus on localised economies and community connections surged, obviously, because people weren't going into their central city. And the people of central, like, City of London would be crucifying me to hear me saying, oh, yeah, we should all go to, like, decentralised small urban spaces, like urban villages, because central London has taken quite a whack from the pandemic. However, sustainability has got better, so, you know, they'll be fine. There's always kind of pros and cons as to the decentralisation of cities and to place them in kind of smaller neighbourhoods where you can get everything within your one space. I personally don't leave Hackney on a weekend. And we've kind of already discussed the importance of understanding the unique fabric of an existing space, and there are so many benefits to bringing the necessities of life into the heart of a neighbourhood. So a 15-minute city, it boosts the local economy through a higher footfall of local high streets, creates diverse local employment opportunities, and allows for productive use of buildings and street space. So just going to point out one building which I think is really interesting, which is the HSBC building in Canary Wharf, which gets fit out constantly and is now, all the banks have decided, you know what, we don't actually like it here, so they're going to move back into the city. And that space, because it doesn't offer enough as its own little neighbourhood is becoming more and more soulless and more desolate. And that is terrifying given the amount of resources that will have gone into building that neighbourhood. So we create a more equitable and inclusive city and a stronger sense of community by prioritising street space and active travel schemes for some of the most vulnerable users. We better engage with health and well-being through active travel engagement with your community and an ease of access to green space, cleaner air. And we lower transport emissions by shifting away from private vehicle priority and lessening the need for elongated travel. And I can take a bet that most of you would quite like to lessen your commute or just stroll into work at some point. So let's zoom out a little bit and break down what we need to consider if we're trying to solve the problem for the air pollution crisis of Paris's riverbanks. So we know the issue. We aren't meeting our climate control targets. The road is a contributor. It's also pretty ugly, and people keep dying there. So, no-brainer. So, who are we designing for? Well, we could be designing for, and these are the things that I need you to consider, okay? Who are we designing for? Commuters, tourists, residents? Are they young? Are they old? Are they teenagers, which are always forgotten? Are they a mix, or either forgotten or labelled as troublesome because they've been forgotten? Are they a mix? What are their concerns, their likes, their beliefs? And their likes is key. Everyone is always asked what the problem is. No one is asked, oh, what do you like? What do you like doing? What do you like about your city? It's really, really key when you're designing. Number 2, what's the concept? Well, there's a huge body of water, subsequently was cleaned up. Well done, Paris. Bring on the Thames. There's historically important buildings. There's a variety of place-based characteristics. That's those identity-based spaces. But there's also going to be areas of danger, dark corners, isolated junctions that people might avoid, and they'll only tell you that, or you'll only figure that out when you start thinking about it personally to yourself, when you start thinking, if I was walking around this city, where would I avoid late at night? Where would I avoid if there was a protest going on? Would I go to the protest? Would I not? You know, there's all sorts of things you start to think about. Okay, so next, you're going to blue sky think those ambitions through. We want residents to spend more time outdoors. We want to get healthier. We want to talk to each other. My God, we want to reconcile quality of life, and we want to do it all through a walkway that everyone thinks as a polluted and dangerous road. So it's pretty big thinking. And what do those ideas feel like when someone experiences? They might feel like freedom, revitalisation, and joy. They might just feel like normality. I think that's the key. Isn't a better quality of life just meant to be normal life? So finally for this workshop, oh, I'm getting too excited. What does the place look like? What amenities are you providing? How are you connecting to the existing infrastructure? And how are you celebrating what's already there? And that's key. Celebrate what's already there. No resident wants you to come in and tell them, oh, we're making this shiny new thing for you. And you just go, but I actually don't need that because I use that down the road. And what you're going to do is just highlight the value of this area, and I'm going to be pushed out. So whilst you're running through those steps, look to weave in your knowledge of sustainability in the traditional sense, how technology might be utilised to achieve some of those ambitions, what research you've read about social isolation or modern day health issues, whatever you might have kind of piqued your interest now or recently, and consider how each of these elements are placing the human at the centre of your designs. So I'm going to spare you the torture of, construction documentation and construction administration, because either you do it in your daily life or you just don't want to do it today. Okay, so whilst you will be designing a master plan to revitalise an existing neighbourhood, I want to just show you a few process images from a project we were appointed to do within the London office, and that followed that exact process. So the brief was for an innovation centre within a school that champions kind of out-of-the-box thinking and students that might not fit the traditional confines of academia, and the school stakeholder team were adamant that the building should be outwardly sustainable, so showcasing kind of to current and prospective students, this is a private school, so they have to kind of run it as a business as well, that they really care about the future of our planet, and that probably sounds very contrived, but I'm telling you that any client that says we'll jump on board with sustainability, you'll take for whatever reason they're saying. So the issue was that the idea of how they feel they might get to a power positive building was solar panels and solar panels only. And I don't think I need to tell you the land mass you need to run a full school with garages and innovation spaces and a full digital workshop. It's just not going to happen. So we talked to the students, the teachers, the parents, board members, states members, everyone. And whilst you will be designing a master plan to revitalise an existing neighbourhood, I want you to show... Oh. Okay. So we talked to them, and then this is what one of the meetings kind of notes started to look like. So we basically looked at, by talking to them, we found out that they actually have an insane amount of waste, like so much waste. Teenagers do create a lot of waste. And so we started to look at how we would be able to kind of weave in our understanding of that waste and rebrand it as a part of their building to outwardly utilise things that they were going to throw away and put them into the concept of the building. So one of the main things, I'm not going to talk through all of them, but one of the main things we did is they have this huge woodland where all the trees were being cut back because they had ash dieback disease. And whilst that was occurring, I was sat and I was looking at this kind of truck coming along and taking away all those logs, and I asked what was going on, and the school hadn't even told us that that's what was happening. We are now using those trees as a part of all the timber from those trees as a part of the fabric of the building. So the benches they sit on, the cladding, all those things they've gone through, all the different testing mechanisms, which are very intense, to get to the point where we can utilise that. But not only is it rebranding waste and making sure that they don't have to spend as much on cladding, but it's also allowing the students to see the connection to the school saying, we're not just chucking this away, we're going to utilise it, and bringing nature into the design. So I guess when we start to do the workshop, you need to think about, if I'm going to tear something down, where's it going to go? Okay? So now it's your turn. And this is the fun bit. So you're going to basically design a neighbourhood, and we've got lots of pens and paper and all sorts of things for you to kind of do that, and you're going to need to think about all the different elements that go into that space. But I'm just going to give you some context of the local area as well. So your site is in the borough of Barking and Dagenham, which I'm sure used to have a nickname about something in daggers, because it wasn't the best area. It's getting better. So it was once known as a home for Ford Dagenham Motors, so that's essentially where they built all the cars. And that was essentially for 70 plus years, I think. And but obviously, part of industrialisation, that's gone. They're like, we don't need this anymore. It's all about intellectual property now. We don't need to do any manufacturing. So instead, so that's gone now. But it's a big part of the community's kind of history. The area stretches very narrowly northwards towards Hainault Forest, while central Dagenham kind of bulges with this like Beacon Tree estate, which is a council estate that was built over 100 years ago. And Dagenham is also famous for the sewing machinist strike of 1968 that is said to have gone some way to the Equal Pay Act. So there's some really amazing things to celebrate in this area. So as well as that, there's also some really cool community groups, and also something to the London Met. So the Tranquil City Community Group are spending time rewilding the areas within the borough that have been left abandoned after antisocial behaviour made them unsafe. So you can see that there's a kind of want for the community to come together and better their space. So there is a sense of belonging. So you need to try and tap into that with what people might actually want. And And this really is this is how fast we run on a project when we're doing like initial strategic. It's like, these are some facts, off you go. So the London Met Police have recently launched a new police force action team because of safety concerns due to TfL underground station, and a local dance school, so that's another fact for you. And then the local dance school is particularly popular with teenager females from the local area, and is being celebrated as a young person's community culture hub. So this is where the site is. Nice and green, like quite rare. So it's an abandoned industrial site. It's surrounded on one side by lush greenery. To the other side is dense number of kind of traditional London terrace houses alongside industrial estates, and a set of small local businesses that have kind of been forgotten by the residents. You're not confined to the industrial site. Instead, what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to encourage community connections. So go beyond the red line boundary and build those connections into your site, okay? There's already a number of existing trails and cycle paths. However, they kind of serve recreational cycling more than they do commuters. So I think that's something you can have a think about. And your task is to design a sustainable urban neighbourhood within this area and take into account the information I've kind of just spoken about and the principles I've discussed. And you're just going to do that from the macro to the micro. So we've given you some, I'm sure you've all seen these before, although my junior staff would probably have to admit that they hadn't. So if you have seen them before, then that's great. There's loads of different kind of ways that you can go. Lots of these crossover. You know, my opinion is that if you try to design to the Sustainable Development Goals, you will develop a kind of compassionate and considered concept. There's lots of them. I won't hold you accountable if you don't solve world hunger in the next 45 minutes or so. You know, maybe I will. So I think the main thing is to think big, think bold, and think blue sky. Don't be confined by the constraints of the world as you currently think about it. Think about the things that mean that you don't feel like you're going to get to some of the statistics that Carolina put up. Why don't you feel like you're going to get there? What can you do to turn it on your head, on its head, and solve those? And I mean, I've invited some of the Energy Institute to one of the network events I'm doing next week, and I've asked them to come and help us solve how we make energy free for the NHS, and that is one of the biggest portfolio assets of land there is. So no idea is wrong, no idea is stupid, and no idea is too big, okay? So there are some prompts around for you. So think about living, retail, healthcare, education, workplace, industrial facilities, government, transit. You don't need all of those because some of them are already there. So it's about being critical in what's there as well. So then finally think about how the space is going to feel, what the feelings are going to evoke, and how your design kind of improves the lives of the users. This is here, so don't worry, it's out there. Yeah, it's printed out there. So you'll be able to kind of have a think about what you need. We'll be asking you to justify why you've put stuff in certain places and why you've put it in there. So have an answer, because I'll be coming round. And you can think about this in a number, you can represent it, in a number of ways. So you can represent it as a traditional master plan. There's lots of paper there for you to be able to do that. But I'd encourage, and you can use different colours for different land uses, and you can add commentaries using little labels. You can go in finer detail and start adding lots of like kind of lines, different trees, different line weights, blah, blah, blah. And you can also do little diagrams, which I think is a really nice way to do it. I'm not expecting you to draw this, okay? Don't worry. But what I'd like is for you to be able to kind of show some of the concepts in elevation. Maybe elevation is better if you're not feeling a bit of perspective drawing. Although you've all got really science-based minds, so I think you'll actually probably be really good at it. So Yeah, so think about adding little diagrams in. Okay, cool. So everyone understand roughly what they're doing? Don't worry, Yes, sorry. Okay.
So we are running tight on time. So you have already received the groups you have been allocated with, A1, whatever. So if you're group A, you go to table 1. I don't think that's too difficult to understand, right? So hopefully. So please, if you can open the door and you can be directed towards your groups. If you don't see your names on